Hey Amy, which Copic colors do you use the most? If you're brand new to alcohol markers, or if you're always missing a few key colors for every project, it can be very tempting to ask your favorite artist or search the internet for a recommendation list. Today, let's talk about the problems that I've noticed with starter marker lists. And I'll give you better beginner recommendations for magenta, red, orange, and yellow Copic markers. Before we jump into my color recommendations, let me stop you from making the same mistake that I made. And it's a mistake that thousands of people make every year. In the beginning, it feels like a smart decision to start with a Copic boxed set. Don't do it. I know it's tempting. It's one easy purchase and the box is full of pretty colors. Don't do it. The sets are a trap. Beginners spend a ton of time debating whether they should start with a box of 12, 24, 36, or even which set of 72 is the best starter box. Don't do it. Copic boxed sets are not what you think. They're not the colors you expect, and for beginners, they're very frustrating. I will never understand why Copic does this to people. They've created these sets of random, super bright, hard to blend, half assortments. They take these unrelated markers and they slap a name on it like basic. Basic does not mean everything you need to get started. You'll spend a lot of money on a box set, and you'd think for all that you'd get at least one blending combination in the box. Nope. Don't do it. Boxed sets are not for beginners. They do not contain blending combinations. 10 minutes after you open the box, you will be back online shopping for more markers to go with this mess. Okay, so if I'm telling you to skip the box sets, that means you'll need a shopping list. And that, my friend, is the next mistake. Again, it seems like it's a smart decision to find an artist or a colorist and purchase the markers that they use most. But there's a difference between the markers an experienced artist uses every day and the best colors for you as a beginner. If you ask a carpenter which tools they use most, folks, you're going to need a hammer and a couple of screwdrivers long before you need a dual-beveled sliding compound laser-guided miter saw with a compass in the stock. The Copic colors that I use on a daily basis are not always appropriate for beginners. Beginners need beginner marker colors. And I don't mean for that to sound insulting. There's a reason we don't teach calculus in kindergarten. When you're a beginner, you don't have many marker skills. So you need markers that are easy to work with and easy to master. It's cruel to hand you a list of difficult markers and then make you feel stupid for not being able to blend them. So what makes a good beginner color? We tend to think of marker colors like Kool-Aid. This is grape, this is strawberry, and here's lime. Different flavors of the same thing, right? But that's not how Copic works. Grape doesn't blend as easily as lime. It never will. And this one lime here, it doesn't blend with anyone. In the art world, we call this staining. Staining colors. Marker inks are made with dye. Every dye is totally different, and Copic uses over 120 different dyes. Some dyes grab onto paper fibers and they refuse to blend. Until you have a lot of experience, some blends are just harder to do. I'd never recommend this marker to a beginner. And there are a lot of Copics just like this. Staining markers are hard to work with, and I see a lot of them on starter marker lists. It's almost like advanced colors, they've forgotten how hard it was in the beginning. Okay, so we want to make learning easier by giving you non-staining colors. We also want stable colors. I don't want you confused by colors that do funky things when they're mixed with the wrong marker. Usefulness is another factor. In the beginning, you don't have a lot of markers, so I think it's important that every marker you purchase, it's a useful color. What makes a useful color? Well, I color a lot of food and flowers. This means I don't use many blue markers. I like blue, I just don't need as much of it as I need yellow and green. And your taste is a factor too. If you don't like the color orange, you probably don't need to buy orange markers right away. In the early stages, let's not waste your money on markers that someone else loves, but that you'll never use. So let's start with yellow. Yellow is an excellent Copic color for beginners. Yellow Copics, they're all easy blending markers. Yellow is always a non-staining color, so you don't have to fight with it to get it to blend. Yellow is also a stable color, so you won't be seeing weird streaks of purple or green appearing as you blend. But Copic does have one big yellow problem. Many Copic Y markers look like school highlighters. There's a fluorescent additive in the Y zeros, and while there's not as much of it in the Y teens, I still find both of these groups too bright and too saturated for realistic flowers. Now the Y20s, these are a more natural group of yellows, but the color quickly goes murky and brownish. Look at Y26 and Y28. And then we have the Y30s, which honestly, these guys lean towards orange. I recommend that beginners start with this combination. 2-1 feels like a natural yellow with no neon glow, and then I combine it with 3-5 and 3-8. This gives you an easy and attractive yellow blend. But it's not a true yellow. So if you're looking for an easy blending traditional yellow, try Y11, Y13, and 1-5. Now let's talk reds. What are the best reds for beginners? This is a harder question than yellow. Yellow is non-staining, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Red is the opposite. Red dyes are staining. Red, it's just a difficult color to blend well. It's not you, it's not your skill level, it's just that red gives everyone a hard time. So these are the reds we must choose from. The R0s are very bright, and R teens are a little calmer, but they're both very orangish. Warm reds are pretty, but I think most people will want to start with a redder red. Okay, from here over, we've got cooler reds. These reds all have hints of pink or blue, but they're also more staining colors. So even if you like these colors better, they're harder to blend. There's a reason R29 is Copic's top-selling red. First, it's a gorgeous color, but it's also not too orange and it's not too blue. Let's call it a balanced red. R29 is not an easy blender, but it's also not as hard as some of these. So I recommend buying the entire R20 family. 29, 27, 24, 22. You can skip the 2-1 and then get the 2-0. R00 can also be added down at the bottom if you like. And I know, this feels like a lot of markers, but there's a method to my madness. This gives you a red blend. This gives you a medium red blend. And this gives you pink. With this pink, you can delay the purchase of RV markers. You don't need any RVs until later. And I did this myself with my own collection. Pink RV markers were one of my very last purchases. I worked for years using nothing but the lighter R markers, and nobody ever noticed that I didn't own any RVs. If you really want a set of pinks, and again, I don't think you need them right away if you've got the full set of R20s, but if you really want magenta and magenta-based pink, we're looking at the same problem that we had with yellows. There's a lot of day glow fluorescent pinks, and then a bunch of weird pinks that are either dirty or purplish. RV29 is my idea of the ideal magenta, and I think it works well combined with RV13 and 14. Okay, so now let's look at the color in between yellow and red. To be perfectly honest, just like pink, orange is not a high priority color. Even if you color a lot of flowers, you can still go for a really long time without coloring anything orange. Orange basically comes into play in the autumn and with Halloween, but if you're watching this video in May or December, you don't need to run right out and buy a bunch of YR markers until the leaves start to fall. And this is why I'm recommending just one orange marker. Save money by purchasing one true orange. I like YR16, and then you can blend it with two of the Y markers that I mentioned earlier. This orange blend will get you through a few fall seasons, allowing you to spend your money on other colors that you'll use more. There is one exception though. I use this YR combination. Well, okay, not all the time, but I use it enough that I need to mention it. This is a beginner combination for things that are gold or brassy. It comes in really handy at Christmas time because let's face it, jingle bells look weird when you color them with a yellow marker. And I just find myself needing a golden color more often than I ever expected. And for those of you who really love orange and you just can't live without it, YR68, YR16, and YR04. That's an easy, beautiful orange blend. Okay, now let's address the elephant in the room. Some of you are yelling at the screen right now because I only suggested one sub-zero color. Sub-zeros are markers with multiple zeros in the cap, and they're all very, very light. And you're right, I didn't suggest them because I don't think beginners need them. In fact, I think most weekend colorers, they use far too many sub-zeros, and then they complain that their coloring looks flat and lifeless. Well, that's because sub-zeros are flat and lifeless. There's barely any color in the sub-zeros. You're not really coloring anything, you're just tinting it like a scared rabbit. Put on your big girl undies and use some real color. Then you'll get more depth and more dimension. Now let's speak to the other hot issue. I didn't recommend any light YR markers for skin tones. I'm glad you noticed. I definitely did not recommend any light YR markers for skin. I have very light skin. I start to burn just thinking about the SUN. I've been in this skin for over 50 years now, and I've met a lot of people like me. We're not orange. None of us are YR0 anything. We'll get to my recommended skin tones when I cover the E-Earth group, but for now, if someone is recommending YR something for Caucasian skin, then they're coloring a cartoon, not real skin. And here's one more tip for today, and with this, I'm kind of giving you a hint of what's to come in my beginner blues video. I want you to add B32 to your red combination. Crazy, I know. On many other recommendation lists, you'll see either R39, R59, or R89 recommended, and they use it to shade R29. I understand why. But remember, I'm trying to give you the most bang for your buck, and I want to make learning easy for you. 3.9, 5.9, and 8.9 are the most stubborn and staining of all the red markers. But if I slide B32 underneath R29, I'm getting the same burgundy wine color without any headache. This is underpainting, and it's a real money saver because we can use many of our starter markers to eliminate the need for some of those rare colors that we only use for shading. I use blue and violet markers for blue and violet things, but then I also use these markers to shade underneath the other colors. It's so much cheaper to mix the colors you need instead of buying specialty shading colors. And the mixes usually give you better depth and dimension and realism, so it's a win-win. Here are my beginner recommendations for yellow, red violet if you absolutely must, and orange. If you want the full marker list or more information about my beta fish project, see the resource page for this video, link down in the description. And to learn more about that underpainting trick that I did with red, see my red-capped mushroom video here. I can't believe I got through the name of that miter saw on the first take. I'm good.